We're currently in the middle of the World Soul Saga, right? And how you guys feeling about the story so far? I think the story is pretty good. In Midnight, I think it's much better than what we had in the War Within, which really felt like a preview. I don't know, it just felt kind of irrelevant and weird for a while there. Midnight seems like we're more in the solid version of the story now. We're actually seeing some story progression and everything. But at the same time, it does feel like we're kind of on hold for The Last Titan, right? So this World Soul Saga, how's it all going? How's it feeling? Let's check this one out here from Bloomsday. The World Soul Saga is Blizzard's trap. Let's check this one out real quick.
Blizzard wants your time again, and after everything we've seen so far, I'm not convinced this trilogy is worth your time. Okay, pause. That sounds harsher than it is, because I do not think the World Soul Saga is a disaster. In fact, that's almost the frustrating part. I think the ideas are good, the locations are awesome, and some of the characters are written really well.
Yeah,
Xal'atath is one of the best things Blizzard has put on screen in years, and that's only because she had time to develop. And I think that...
Yeah, I like Xal'atath. I think she's been a cool character for the most part. She's also not like this, even though she's pretty powerful and she's kind of... outplanned us for the most part. She's not infallible. Like, she's not this perfect, like the Jailer was, where he seemed to always be like, oh, puny humans running around all bald and shit, you know, talking shit to us all the time, and really nothing we did ever affected him until we actually fought him. Xal'atath's had mistakes, right? She's had unexpected oh no, Darkheart got hit with an arrow. Oh no, Sylvanas just showed up. She literally says, I wasn't planning for this, you know, so then she goes away. It's, she's had her moments where, yeah, she's clearly planning and doing shit and figuring it out as she goes. And I think she's been a pretty cool villain for the most part. And actually, I think Iridikron's been pretty cool too. We haven't seen him yet. But actually, out of Dragonflight, I think he was the coolest thing to come out of that expansion. And he really did lead us into the War Within.
There are moments here where you can actually see the...
I would be her sex slave. Well, yeah, of course, there's that too. Yeah, there is that part of it too, Doc. I agree.
...shape of a really great Warcraft
She's quite
story
attractive.
Trying to claw its way out of the mud. But that's the problem. Trying is a key word here, because the World Soul Saga feels less like a fully realized trilogy and more like Blizzard asking us to wait for The Last Titan. Let's start with the War Within, because I do not want to spend too long on it, because the expansion itself kind of feels like setup. Azeroth is crying out, the void is moving, and the whole thing is framed as the opening chapter of a trilogy. Great, fine, good start. And then what happens? Well, not much. And that has always been my problem with The World Within. It feels like a prequel DLC stretched into a full expansion. It begins with Xal'atath gaining momentum, and then...
Well, to understand why The War Within feels like it does, we got to understand, like, why the whole trilogy even happened in the first place, right? They brought Chris Metzen back on, and The War Within was already developed. That shit was already, you know, getting ready to ship out and stuff. And then Metzen looked at the story and said, whoa, we can't solve the World Soul Saga in a 2.5 to 3 year expansion. That's not going to work. We need to spread this shit out. This needs to be told over multiple expansions. And so he took that story and did. Now, he pulled it apart, and he's added a lot to it, I'm sure, to be able to make it fill up 3 expansions. But at the same time, it feels like he pulled it so far to the right that he left the very beginning of it kind of empty. It did feel like the War Within was trying to get us into the World Soul Saga, but at the same time it was already developed and it had some other shit it had to do. Like the Earthen honestly felt like, okay, we're talking about the Earthen here. Oh, they're kind of irrelevant now. And then we got into the Haranir. Oh, we're talking about the Haranir. Actually, we're going to talk about them more later. It did feel like a lot of introductory shit that never got really completed. It was just like pre-War Within, I guess you could call it. It felt like a pre-patch, it did, for the story-wise for the rest of this saga.
With Xal'atath gaining even more momentum. Illyria begins the expansion chasing her, and she ends the expansion still chasing her. Everything important is still...
Harandar still feels like it was meant for the War Within, not Midnight. It for sure it was. Harandar was supposed to be part of the Rootlands patch for the War Within, and instead they put the ethereal shit in there. So we had the whole Koresh ethereal patch, which I really feel like that replaced the Rootlands because he had to pull that voidy shit into the story more so he could go into the War Within. That's definitely, I would say that's like guaranteed that's what happened.
coming later. And that's the thing I still feel with Midnight, and I could forgive that if Midnight was the chapter where everything suddenly clicked into place, because that is what the middle chapter is supposed to do in a trilogy. Chapter 1 can set the board, Chapter 3 can bring the hammer down, but with Chapter 2 has to justify the whole damn structure, has to prove this trilogy is more than branding, has to prove Blizzard didn't split one long plot into 3 separate boxes and hope would still be around even if the story is simply mid. And that is where Midnight worries me, because this expansion should have been free. Seriously, this should be one of the easiest W's Blizzard has gotten so far. You going back to Quell the Last, you have the Sunwell, the Void crawling over one of the most iconic regions in the game, and the possibility of making this saga feel personal instead of just another cosmic war. And yet somehow Blizzard found a way to make Midnight feel weirdly shallow. Yeah, shallow is the word I'm going to use, because this is not a lack of content problem. There's loads of it, and it is not a lack of zones either. They look stunning apart from Harandar.
I will say, so far what I feel like Midnight has done, and it's kind of labeled as the Void expansion, right? But I actually feel like it's more of the Light expansion. I feel like we've gotten a lot more Light lore with all this light blindness shit and the Sunwell shit and everything going on with the Light and the Army of the Light. Paladins, Alonza's Foul talking about the creation of the first Paladin. We've gotten so much more Light lore than we have really Void lore. Like, do we know more about the Void now than we did before the Midnight launched? I don't think so.
Another death
Mythjaw, thank you for the sub, man. I'll take the primes all day. Thank you, man. 13 months of being a Death Knight of our Scourge. I don't know if we've gotten more Midnight, really Void lore. It should be this should be the Light, the mid-Light expansion. That's what they should have called it. So, and in terms of that, I kind of agree with him. That has the story really advanced a lot? I don't know. But we have learned a lot, for sure. We've gotten a lot of new lore when it comes to the Light.
That whole place really bothers me to the core, and I'll get to it shortly. And it's not even really a lack of lore. If anything, Warcraft almost always has too much lore. It has entire warehouses of lore. That has never been the issue. Rather, the issue is depth. And too often, Midnight doesn't have any depth, apart from some few and far between moments with Arator, but the others, well, we'll discuss them. The first massive problem I have is the Horde, or more precisely, the total non-existence.
Oh, holy... Is that number right? What the fuck? That's almost 7,000 people. What is going on? Damn. Oh my god. Joe? I don't even know how to say that. What the hell, man? Holy crap. Well, welcome in, guys. Yeah, I don't know why you'd bring them here. This is a shitty-ass stream. Shit. Or welcome in, boys. Welcome to an AI Beaver stream. Yes, shout out to that man. Thank you so much. Holy crap. Oh my god. Yeah, welcome in, guys. We're currently discussing the World Soul Saga and whether or not it's been good so far. So this is a pretty generalized conversation. Enjoy the stream for what it is so far, and thank you so much for that raid. I appreciate it. Damn, this is the second raid of the day. What's going on?
Of the Horde as an actual institution. Where is Thrall, the character Blizzard marketed as a central figure in the War Within, and the World Soul Saga as a whole had 3 minutes of screen time in the War Within, then disappeared, and now he's nowhere to be found. This expansion was sold, at least in spirit, as something closer to the Blood Elves, to Silvermoon, and to Quell the Last, to this part of the world and its people. And yet, when one of the most important Horde cities in the game is under existential threat, where is the Horde?
Yes.
Nowhere. And
we talked about this a while back, that where the hell is the Horde? I mean, we're literally kicking off a hype train too. Damn, thank you so much, guys. I appreciate that. We're like, where the hell is the Horde? We're in a Blood Elf city, okay? Clearly, it's a Horde capital, technically, and we're dealing with a world-ending threat. And right now, we keep talking with a bunch of Alliance characters for the most part. We're dealing with a bunch of Alliance guys. Yes, we see Arator, but Arator's both of his parents are on the Alliance. He's technically a Blood Elf, but no, he's not. He's a High Elf / human. So he doesn't even fit that package. Other than that, we're just seeing Blood Elves everywhere. It's just Blood Elves and Alliance characters fighting against the Void. This is an existential threat to the entire world. Where the fuck is Thrall? This guy's sitting in a desert making sandcastles still. But I don't know how to explain it. But yeah, we got no Horde presence, essentially, other than the Horde character players. Okay, we see the Horde character players running around, but other than that, where the hell are all the Horde armies?
Another Death Knight.
Sweaty Betty, thank you for coming in with that tier 1. I appreciate that. 3 months. Yep. No presence
The
whatsoever.
story somehow treats this less like a geopolitical emergency and more like a neighborhood problem that a couple of highly marketable heroes will handle personally. It makes the world feel smaller than it should, and that is deadly for a story like this, because if you want me to believe the stakes are cosmic, then the world itself has to react like it exists, and definitely not just the windrunners what's central to this story. The actual setting needs to move. Instead, Midnight often feels shallow, and that matters because the Burning Legion already did this kind of storyline better. Which brings me to the Devouring Host, our villains, and I understand what Blizzard wants here. They want a new cosmic horror, a new kind of apocalypse. A force that feels ancient, alien, and bigger than the Burning Legion, but in execution, it just feels like the purple Burning Legion. That's the issue.
It does
Purple
feel
is
like the
great,
purple
though.
Burning
Warcraft
Legion.
loves purple, but aesthetically and structurally, the threat feels too familiar. It doesn't feel like a fundamentally new storytelling experience. Blizzard.
I mean, but you could say the same about like real life. Like, okay, what's the new threat? Oh, it's another country with an army. I mean, how threatening can anything be if you're not really developing a giant army to fight against and take over the world? Yeah, that's going to be a pretty typical thing. The Lich King had his army, the Legion had their army, and yeah, she's got her purpley army. Okay, fine. I don't think that's necessarily like a shot against the story of the Void. I just think they haven't developed it enough. Like I said, I feel like this is more of a story about the light right now than it is about the Void. It would be nice if we learned a little bit more about the Void. The only really story we got was that short cutscene where we see Xal'atath as a child, being changed into what she is now. Okay, but we still have no reason for it. We still don't understand what the Void's purpose was in doing that, other than, okay, the Void's just bad and devours. Maybe it's that simple. Maybe it is. But that's, I think, why we used to love the old gods, right? Because the old gods brought so much more depth to the Void, right? The whispers of Nazath and Yogg-Saron and all this shit happening with and they always had their goals and their means to getting to those ends. And since they've been gone, it's kind of been like the Void feels like there's a void there, right? Like something's missing. Maybe we'll get more of that. Maybe Nazath's coming back. That's been a big hot thing lately.
Recolored an old nightmare and expected the audience to treat it like a revolution, basically. Where are the armies? Where's the desperate sense that Azeroth as a world is reacting to this? If you tell me this thing is bigger than the Legion, but the world reacts to it like it's a regional inconvenience, then I'm sorry, I'm not feeling the apocalypse. You can see the voice storm and the sun will beam from literally any corner of the map, and you're telling me no army came to see what is happening there. And I think that is the real disease eating away at the World Soul Saga. Everything is being paced around delivery, not drama. Okay, let me explain what I mean more clearly. The new golden boy, Arator, I thought he'd be great from what I've seen.
Great.
And he is in some parts. The story gets personal only and only when he's involved. But then Blizzard shoves him in my face, as if I'm going to believe that Lor'themar, the Lord Regent of Quel'Thalas, lets him lead the charge against Xal'atath in the Isle of Quel'Danas. You literally have all the elves there, and you're going to tell me that Lor'themar and Liadrin will let Arator lead the charge. I know he's voiced by Yuri Lowenthal, and he wants screen time.
I don't know if he's letting him lead the charge necessarily, but we saw it in the cinematic, right? He totally was fighting. He was one of the best fighters against the Void in that first invasion. So I'm sure, right, we had a world-ending threat of invading the city, and this guy, Arator, shows up, and he's one of the best people at defending the city. I think Lor'themar is going to develop some quick trust with him. For sure. We witnessed it in the cinematic. I mean, I'm sure everybody in the battle saw this guy go full Super Saiyan Paladin. So I think he's developed a little bit of trust for him.
But come on, the whole scenario was weird and disappointing in that regard. It undermined Lor'themar's character and even Liadrin. Lor'themar does nothing in his story so far. He just gives me quests and that's it. He barely says anything besides the first few hours of the expansion. And one thing that really bugs me are the Haranir. On paper, they're not a terrible concept. Guardians of ancient roots tied to primordial forests and defenders of world trees. But that's the problem. That space already belongs to the Night Elves, or at least it should. That emotional and symbolic territory already had owners, Malfurion and Tyrande. The entire Night Elf culture's identity since Warcraft 3, nature, sacred groves, world trees, the whole lane is not exactly unclaimed real estate. So when the Haranir show up occupying that same narrative function, like Blizzard quietly invented a new group to carry themes used to belong to a race whose story they no longer know how to deal with. And once you see it that way, it gets kind of hard to unsettle see. Because what happened with the Night Elves told you still happened. Blizzard wrote themselves into a corner with an atrocity so severe that actually taking it seriously would permanently destabilize the faction balance, and the whole fake "we're all working together now" direction they clearly want the game to have. So instead of really grappling with that damage, it starts to feel like they're sidestepping it, and that is not elegant storytelling.
I bet Blizzard regrets burning the World Tree. I bet they do. I think like that was kind of a mistake. You took out Darnassus for one. That would have been a freaking beautiful city to see rebuilt the kind of same way that we see Silvermoon rebuilt right now. And then, with what it did to Sylvanas' story, really did ruin her as a character. It was such a big, Sylvanas was fucked up, but to go and pull a genocidal destruction of an entire race, that just seemed out of character. And they blamed it on the jailer and shit. It didn't really work. And then you got the fallout of it all. Okay, World Tree's been destroyed now. Night Elves are fucking living in a little ditch with some roots around them now. It's I think it was kind of a mistake. Yeah, I think they wish they could go back and not do that.
And Midnight is full of that kind of avoidance. The story keeps brushing up against ideas that should be explosive, then backing away before they become messy. Yes. Arator forgives Turalyon after 5 quests. Illyria forgives Turalyon after a kiss on the cheek. The Horde should matter more, the Blood Elves should matter more. Instead, Blizzard too often defaults to what I can only describe as safe fantasy theme park storytelling where everyone is friendly and everyone gets along. Everything looks dramatic, sounds dramatic, very little is allowed to become truly destabilizing. Take Turalyon. This guy should be one of the most volatile characters in the entire saga. He is a walking fusion of faith and war. The kind of character who should become more terrifying the more convinced he is that he's right. And yet the writing around him feels inconsistent. Sometimes Blizzard hints that the light's influence can make him cold and wrathful and vengeful. Then the story just kind of forgets about it. Again with the love motif. They're trying to say that love for his family protects him from the light's wrath. But that is something we've seen so many times before, from Star Wars to Harry Potter.
Well, I could see Xal'atath fucking with him, making him think that Arator and Illyria are dead, and it leads him to some kind of light and rage thing, because right now, the way Blizzard's written him is, yes, his son and his wife are kind of the anchors that keep him from going full light zealot. So we'll see. I think there's still time for some story development here.
And Peppa Pig. If the light's wrath is such a danger,
but that's the thing with the
saga.
Why does it
only seem to matter when the scene needs a burst of tension?
That
is the kind of thing that makes the writing feel managed. Like the characters are not being allowed to become as dangerous or as contradictory as the premise requires. And Arator, oh my god, Arator should be one of the most interesting pieces on the board. Son of Turalyon and Illyria, child of light and void, living result of one of Warcraft's weirdest and brushed over prophecies Blizzard has ever made. So why does he so often feel like a mechanism instead of a person? How is he so surprised seeing the Scarlet Crusade use the light for bad things? I thought this was a thing since vanilla Arator. I guess they wanted to explain to the new players.
Yeah, but Arator's still pretty young, young and naive, right? So yes, of course, the Scarlet Crusade has been around long before Arator. But he's got to learn shit himself. Just because the society already knows this doesn't mean Arator necessarily knows it. And even if he was told it, you don't believe it a lot of times until you see it yourself. So I think Arator has been pretty well. I don't know if I agree with what he's saying about Turalyon and Arator right now. They've been developing them. I kind of like where things are going with that side of things. Yeah, Strick says, I kind of don't agree with this point he's making right now. Didn't he want conflict? Turalyon is providing some interesting conflict. Yeah, I agree. Full anger towards the trolls. Yeah, and we're going to see more troll shit going on in the next patch, too. So we'll see what happens with Turalyon soon.
But still, this is some Game of Thrones Season 8 errors here, and that is mostly what bugged me with this storyline. And that's really the thing with these characters, they exist whole up themes to embody a moral lane, but they do not always feel like messy, contradictory people with impulses that might actually derail things. That is especially frustrating because Blizzard does let a character carry dramatic weight. The difference is obvious. Xal'atath is a perfect example. She works because she does things. Literally, she's the only one who does things. She bends the story around herself, feels active and genuinely dangerous. In The War Within, she was basically carrying the dramatic weight of the entire expansion on her back because she was the only person who consistently made the plot move. And in Midnight, the contrast only gets sharper because when the villain feels more alive than half the heroes, you do not have a threat problem. Your protagonists are weak, guys. For a fantasy epic about the end of ages, the writing still often sounds...
It's interesting. I do feel like because he just put him on the screen, where the fuck is Prophet Velen? This guy had a whole prophecy about the light versus the void. I think it was actually Burning Legion shit that he was really cared about. But I feel like he's been kind of MIA. Considering he's like a light prophet, well, I would think he'd be more involved here. There are definitely some characters in the current storyline that they should be involved, like based on everything we know about them. But Blizzard's kind of like, well, we don't have enough writers to do this right now, so we'll just kind of shelve these guys.
Weirdly safe.
It does
the
feel
actual
that
language often feels too kid-friendly for the weight of what is happening. That softness bleeds into everything. And again, I do not think Midnight...
He's standing beside Anduin during the last quest. Yes, he's there for the birth of the Dawn Well, and he was helping keep the Light Well stable when it was being pumped full of void. But I would expect more conversations with him. You know, for him to say something, give an opinion on what's going on here. He's a prophet. But he's kind of just casting. He's like in an infinite cast. I don't know.
Is all bad. Far from it. There are parts of it I genuinely like. The atmosphere is strong, some of the environments are beautiful, the way the Sunwell changes after finishing Void Spire infused with the Void, the Beleren fight, the Lura fight, Voidstorm has some excellent side content. There are sparks here. There are good ideas, which again makes the missed opportunities sting even more because this should have been the expansion where the World Soul Saga showed us its teeth and why we should care about what is happening. Instead, it feels like Blizzard is still hedging. And that brings us to Sylvanas. Now this is where things get dangerous because I actually think there is something potentially interesting here. Not because I suddenly trust Blizzard with Sylvanas. God no, but Shadowlands is not something Warcraft can just...
Strix. Thank you for the follow. And as far as Sylvanas goes, I'll be honest, I didn't really care for her. I'm going to enter and, you know, do my cool walk, shoot an arrow out of my dick, and then go back into the portal. I don't know. I thought it was an all right moment. I think she should have just stuck around. I don't know if she was really going to just show up and then go back to the Shadowlands. I get she's discovering the Titan influence in the Shadowlands right now. I thought that was cool. But we already knew that going into this expansion because we did the Erator little pre-questline thing where we went and saw
Let us lay waste to this
Cerevis, thank you for the sub on YouTube. Other than that, I just felt like her moment was kind of like, yeah, oh, she's back. Oh, no, she's not. She's not. So we'll see what happens with Sylvanas. Like I said, I really think Blizzard regrets what happened with her with Teldrassil and everything.
Pretend never happened. As messy and damaging as that story was, the cosmology exists, the afterlife problem exists, the death problem exists, and if Blizzard is going to circle back to that through Sylvanas, through the Maw, through the void sphere of death, and whatever is festering underneath the last Titan, then yes, there is material there, potentially good one. Sylvanas' presence terrifying Xalatath, the idea that death may still be the void's true enemy, and the suggestion that the Shadowlands was in fact a hoax by the Titans to essentially get an enormous amount of anima. These are all very interesting themes, but here is the catch.
Yeah, death being Void's enemy is a very interesting point. We saw it in the Illyria comic where the Void was whispering to her to kill Sylvanas because she's dangerous. The Void considers her to be dangerous. So there's some cool storylines underlying here. That's why I felt like when she went away, I was like, oh man, I thought we were going to get something more cool. Then she just shows up and then disappears again. This guy wants a blockbuster movie grade written in a 22-year MMO. I think he's kind of expecting too much. But I think he just feels like we're waiting for the last Titan. Like he's excited about where the story's going, but it's going very slow. And I guess that's kind of expected with a story that's spread over 2-year expansions, 3 of them to be exact. So it's a lot. It's a long time to tell a story.
Blizzard has not earned the confidence here because if the last Titan is going to pick up all of this Shadowlands residue, the Titan mystery, conspiracy, the World Soul question, and the final meaning of the World Soul Saga, then it has to do so from a position of strength. And right now, I do not think the saga has that strength. Not yet. Why? Because the last Titan only works if the first 2 expansions made this trilogy feel necessary. And I'm not sure they have. The War Within feels like setup. Midnight feels like
How old is Eretor? I think he's like 80 something. But in terms of elf years, he's very young. He's like a fucking teenager. I'll look up his exact age, but he's a very young elf.
A beautiful house setup from its own ideas, and I truly believe I would have enjoyed Midnight a lot more had War Within never existed. So now all this pressure slides onto the Last Titan to deliver the true consequences, the real revelations, the emotional weight, the final reckoning, the thing that makes this all worth it. That is just too much. No finale should have to save a trilogy from the first 2 chapters. This is not how trilogies work, and that is a thought I keep coming back to with the World Soul Saga. Is this worth your time as a trilogy? Maybe not. I don't know what they're gonna do in the next chapters, but I doubt it will change. That is not a great place to be, even if they somehow tie this all together. Bring Illidan back, bring Sargeras, pull that sword out from Silithus and
pull it
slay
out.
all the Titans.
There's a lot here, but look, to be fair, if you guys really think about it, most trilogies, even in movies, suck. Like, there's usually one of the movies in the trilogy that's like, did we really need this? This feels like fucking filler content. So, I mean, we'll see. The thing is, overall, I think the story is cool. I think his main problem, and the guy by him, I mean the guy who made this video, is he doesn't feel like it's moving quick enough. And that is a typical problem of a trilogy, whether it's a game or a movie. Or
I'll
a book
ask
even.
myself, why the trilogy? Because what I'm seeing now, we could have still have had this story without the War Within, and Midnight still somehow feels like setup. And right now, The Last Titan feels like a big promise. I really do hope Medson knows what he's doing. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to boop the like button.
Oh, so there we go. Yeah, nice video overall. I get with some of his issues with the way the story's being told and the pace of it all. But yeah, like I said, this is a typical trilogy problem for sure. It says right here that Eretor was about 32 years old at the time of Dragonflight. So how long ago was Dragonflight? I guess he's like 40 now. So I doubled his age. But you got to think of him in elf years. He's like a fucking infant. Elves live a very long time. So yeah, he's still very young. I would say, yeah, he's basically a young teenager at this point. Overall, nice video from Bloomsday. I enjoyed this conversation, and we'll see what happens with the story going forward.